Call this meeting to order of the Attleboro School Committee. Please rise. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The purpose of this special time meeting tonight is a public hearing on school choice. Dr. Durkin has given a recommendation to the school committee. She will be given that at a later time on the agenda. So at this time, I would like Dr. Durkin to first explain, before I open the public forum, if anybody would like to talk to the public about what school choice does entail.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. School choice is within the Massachusetts regulations, and it is an item that needs to be voted on annually by school committees each year. School choice would open up admission to our schools beyond Attleboro boundaries and beyond individuals who are residents of Attleboro. My recommendation to the committee is that we do not provide for school choice for three major reasons. Number one, it becomes volatile in terms of us not understanding or knowing or being able to forecast what our enrollment projections would be. And at this point, our FY14 budget would not accommodate the cost for additional staff associated with possible increase in numbers of students that might be wanting to come to Attleboro Public Schools. The second issue is because we are fortunate enough to have a comprehensive high school that includes career and technical. At this point, we have seen that students who do want to come to school choice are not interested necessarily in the programs we have to offer. And though we are trying to increase those programs, we want to make sure that to avoid unnecessary costs for Tri-County and Bristol Aggie. At the same time, we have not found historically that students want to be able to come to our CTE program to take advantage of those programs. That may increase as we increase our programs. That need might increase, or how should I say, the popularity of it. But at this point, our historical data does not show that. And you are well aware that in some of our programs, we are close to maximizing already our medical assisting, our pre-engineering, and we need to ensure as those programs become far more extensive, we want to make sure they're offered to our Attleboro students first, beyond students outside of Attleboro. And the last is a point that is important for school committees to understand, that we are financially exposed when we accept a school choice student, in the sense that that student is available to be part of the Attleboro Public Schools for the remainder of his or her career. With that, if there is a medical issue, if there is a special education referral, which students are entitled to have that, we would bear the cost of all those additional services if needed. Now, we well know those costs are important for children who are residents of Attleboro. In fact, we have many families moving here because of the extensive special education services we offer, particularly at the preschool level. But at the same time, for a school choice student who might arrive here, we would be liable for those costs regardless for the remainder of his or her career. And that is, again, a cost that we can't forecast. We well know our legal and technical obligation for children who are residents of Attleboro, and we obviously embrace that because that's the law and that's the right thing to do, but we don't know what that would mean for students coming outside of Attleboro. Based on that, I would ask that the school committee do not approve school choice for the 2013-2014 school year. And I do think, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it's wise to revisit that each year. Each year things change, and you may see it eventually as a revenue cost. At this point, I think the revenue that we would possibly be gained would be mitigated by possible costs that we could incur. And I think our budget is so tight in terms of what we are wanting for next year that it would not be wise to take that risk I'm recommending to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durkin. I think I'll take questions later on the new business, because the committee is going to vote upon this, so the motion will be brought up. We will have time for discussion. So at this time, I would like to offer, if there's any member of the public that would like to come and speak in front of the full school committee about school choice for FY14 year, please do so now. Step up to the podium. Okay, as usual, nobody wants to talk about school choice. So at this time, I want to put a motion to adjourn and close this open forum session, and we will be re-adjourning this meeting at 7 o'clock at a normally scheduled school committee meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Call this meeting to order of the Attleboro School Committee. Please rise and join the committee. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Given notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. Our first item up tonight is we have some special recognitions. I would like to recognize in our crowd tonight, we have the incoming Superintendent of the Attleboro Public Schools, Mr. Kenneth Sheehan, with us tonight. Thank you, Ken. Ken and Dr. Durkin, the administration, have been working together in devising a plan to make a smooth transition, and I want to thank Mr. Sheehan for making that time available, and Dr. Durkin and her administration. It's truly appreciated. Our first recognition tonight is our former head football coach, Mr. Kevin DeShanes. I hope I get that right, Kevin. And I'm going to pass this presentation over to the Vice Chair, Brenda Potato, at this time. Brenda?
Yes. Hi, I've asked the chairman if we could recognize Mr. DeShanes tonight. I asked Mr. Houle to actually send me some information regarding Mr. DeShanes. So I'm just going to read the quick, synopsis here, and afterwards I'd like Mr. Coach Kevin DeShanes to come up if he'd like to say anything. Mr. DeShanes has been a coach for the Attleboro High School, assistant football coach from 1988 to 2001. He was a head coach from 2002 to 2012. He was a loyal and devoted coach at Attleboro High School and had made many positive contributions to the football program. He instilled a sense of pride in the football program, starting the Gridiron Club, football youth night, and summer camps. Along with administration, players, coaching staff, and opposing coaches, they all have a high regard of respect for Coach Kevin DeShanes. He coached for the kids and has taught many life lessons to them through his 25 years of coaching football at Attleboro High School. Mr. Houle conveyed to me he had a work ethic of no other coach he knew. So with that being said, we'd like to present you with a certificate on behalf of the Attleboro School Committee for your dedication to the kids of the city of Attleboro.
The Attleboro School Committee hereby commends Coach Kevin DeShanes for his contributions as a loyal and devoted educator and coach at Attleboro High School. On behalf of the students, educators, and families who have benefited from his tireless efforts, the Attleboro School Committee expresses its sincere appreciation. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you very much for this honor. And really the honor is mine for being able to coach for my alma mater in the city I live, and with a lot of great people. And there's a lot of people to thank, and I know I'll forget somebody, so my thank yous go out to the administration for being supportive of our student athletes, all the coaches I've worked with for my last 25 years, but most importantly, the players. They've taught me a lot of lessons over the years, and all the hard work and dedication that they put in, along with their parents and being supportive, and just giving me the opportunity to work with their children for the last 25 years has been a blessing to me. And also, the big thing is being a football coach. It is a lot of time and sacrifice, and there's one woman that deserves a lot of thank yous. That's my wife, Michelle. So I just want to thank all of you for recognizing me this evening. I want to wish Coach Strack and his staff, and most importantly, the student athletes of Attleboro High School, the best in the future, and christen that new stadium with the championship. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, there's one thing I just want to know. Mr. DeShanes is still an educator in the Attleboro Public Schools. We
Yes,
just want to
I am.
make sure. He retired with football coaching, but he's still in our schools. So that was one point we just wanted to make. Mr. Ty wanted to make sure.
Yes.
He's not retiring yet.
No,
He's
I
too
am.
young. Too young.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the recognitions, I'm going to hand it over to our Student Advisory Council School Committee representative, Mr. David Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, did you want the community update first? Only because the PowerPoint is set up that way, and Annalea's going to leave office after she's
That would be
recognized.
fine with me. Handle it.
Mrs. Cuevas first, if you could run through our community update, and then we'll get on to recognizing you and your excellent work.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And these are the school-sponsored events for this meeting of June 3rd. District-wide, we have on June 6th the Grade 4 Middle School Parents' Night. At Brennan Middle School, it will be held from 6 to 7 p.m. At Qualla Middle School from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And at Wamsutta Middle School from 6 to 7 p.m. At Attleboro High School, on June 4th and June 6th, we have graduation rehearsals from 8:30 to 10:30 in the Bray Auditorium. On June 6th also, we have the senior reception from 7 to 10 p.m. at Dimitri's. On June 6th, we have the senior breakfast from 9 to 11 at the Highland Country Club. Also on June 7th, we have AHS graduation at 6 p.m. on the Tozier Cassidy field, and if it rains, it will be held in a large gym. On June 13th, we have the fall sports meeting at 2 p.m. in the Bray Auditorium, and on June 14th, we have the freshman social from 7 to 10 p.m. in cafeteria B1, I believe. In the middle schools at Brennan, we have on June 5th the spring concert. On June 11th, the school barbecue from 10:45 to 12:45, and also on June 11th, the PTO meeting at 6:30 in the library. At Qualla Middle School on June 14th, we have the grade 8 semi-formal from 6 to 9:30 p.m. And at Wamsutta Middle School, we have on June 7th, Hats On Day for Pediatric Cancer. On June 11th, spring concert at 6 p.m. And on June 12th, the PTO meeting at 6:30 p.m. In our elementary schools at Hyman Fine on June 4th, we have the spring barbecue and field day, and the rain date for that is June 10th. On June 13th, we have our grade 4 chorus and art show at 6:30 p.m. At Hill Roberts on June 7th, we have the field day and barbecue during lunchtimes, and the rain date for that is June 14th. On June 12th, we have the kindergarten field day, and also on June 12th, we have grade 4 integrated arts show from 7 to 8 p.m. At Studley on June 4th, we have our grade 4 students visit Qualla Middle School. On June 5th, grade 4 students visit Brennan Middle School. And on June 6th, grade 4 students visit Wamsutta Middle School. On June 13th, grade 4 has a spring concert at 6 p.m. in the Brennan Cafeteria. And on June 14th, we have the Flag Day ceremony at 9:15 a.m. At Thatcher and ELC on June 6th, grade 4 visits Wamsutta from 9:15 to 10:35. On June 7th, grade 4 visits Brennan and Coelho students visit BMS and CMS from 9:15 to 10:35. On June 11th, grade 4 is the grade 4 jump rope show at 10, 2, and 6:30, and the parent show is in the gym. On June 13th, grade 3 Attleboro Industrial Museum presentation from 10 to 12:15 in the auditorium, and on June 14th is the grades K through 4 Flag Day concert at 10 a.m. in the auditorium. And at Willett, we have on June 4th, grade 4 students visit Brennan Middle School from 9:15 to 10:30 a.m. And on June 13th, grade 4 spring concert at 6:30 p.m. in the Brennan cafeteria.
Thank you, Annalea. Well done, as always. Mr. Chairman will note that Annalea's partner in the Student Advisory Council, Mr. Drucker, is unavailable this evening. He's out sailing the high seas with the class of 2013 on their senior cruise, but we're obviously honoring him as well. So Ms. Cuevas-Ferreras has prepared a brief presentation recapping this year in the Student Advisory Council, talk a little bit about some of the work that she and Mr. Drucker were able to do to contribute to the Attleboro school system. So, Annalea?
So, as members of SAC, both Keith and I have certain components that we have to accomplish. One of them being coming to school committee meetings and doing what I just did, which is reading the school-sponsored events. Some other things that we do is we have regional SAC conferences at meetings at Bridgewater, I think it's high school. But there we meet with students from the Southeast region, and we talk about statewide issues in all of the schools and try to come up with solutions to these problems and try to get them to the Board of Education to try to improve our school system. And also, this year we had the pleasure of being involved in the superintendent search process. And what our role in that was, we made a presentation to our finalists on basically why we feel Blue Pride and what Blue Pride means to us. And I personally found that very rewarding because I got to meet both candidates, one of them being Mr. Sheehan, and that was very rewarding for me. I'd never been a part of a search like that one, so I'm very thankful to the school committee for allowing us to be part of that. And lastly, Keith and I this year we came up with the idea of a sophomore seminar, which we created, planned, and carried through. I personally think that it went well. Hopefully, I have hopes for the future that it will continue to improve and be a part of Attleboro High School from now on, hopefully. And that was basically just a program that we designed to try to help sophomores transition from a world that's like focused on MCAS to start thinking about SATs and what you want to do, and just try to help them make sure that they realize that they're halfway there and that they just have 2 years left and it'll pass by really fast. I can tell you that, graduating Friday. So that's pretty much what we do as SAC members.
And that's the year that was in the Student Advisory Council. And I would say that the work that Keith, Analia, and some other members of their class did in preparing and executing the sophomore seminar was extremely impressive. I think Mr. Runey would share that sentiment, and I do think that it is a program that will continue to grow in Attleboro High School and be a lasting contribution. And I'm looking over at your successors, as I say that, as they take on responsibility for the sophomore seminar and many other components. So we wanted to make sure that we ran through the Student Advisory Council year in review with the new student reps here, because we didn't want them to think that we hand out Soaring Eagles without there being any work involved. But now that has been done, I'll just close by saying, Mr. Chairman, that of all the assignments that you've designated me for during my service on the school committee, there's nothing that I'm more grateful for than to have had the opportunity to work with Annalie and Keith. So it's far and away the most fulfilling and enjoyable experience that I've had during my term. So Analia, if you see Keith, tell him I said thanks, and thanks to you as well. So you're receiving a lot of awards this month, a lot of different recognitions, and as I hand this one over to you, what I would say is that although a lot of times when people are handing you stuff, including Friday, it is most directly connected to things you've already done and things you've already accomplished, that you should keep in mind with each thing that we hand you, each time we say your name, each time you're recognized. It's in anticipation of all the contributions that we're sure you're going to make in the years ahead. So congratulations, and I'll give you and Keith your Soaring Eagle Awards.
Thank you. I will.
Oh, and now the successors. One of you guys come up. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cuevas Ferraris is going to introduce the new student reps to the school committee, Mr. Clark and Mr. Lancaster. Now you get a seat. You got elected. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Look at that. Excellent.
So I have the pleasure of personally knowing both of these fine gentlemen. I've had classes with both of them, and I'm very excited to let you know what they're all about, and I'm happy to pass down power to these two fellows. I think they deserve it. So first of all, we have Max Lancaster, and he is a 3-year member of Student Council, happens to be a baseball captain as well, is a 7-year volunteer at Cape and Park Zoo, is a National Honor Society president, is a MIAA Student Athlete Citizen of the Year, also received an Army Award at this year's awards night, and was a participant in the assistant principal search. And Brandon Clark is a varsity football, baseball, and basketball player, is a youth leader and plays the drums at his church, is a member of the National Honor Society, works as an RSVP facilitator, and also works a summer job. So I think that doesn't really sum them up. I think they're great kids, and I'm so excited that they're the ones that are going to be doing this job for you guys. So, well, not for you guys, but for themselves as well.
And I'll add on to that, that I said to Keith and Analia a year ago that when you're elected to represent the students in the capacity of a Student Advisory Council representative, you are taking on the responsibility to represent 6,000 students at all times. And the reality is most students in your class, most students in any class will not spend time in this room. They'll not be before the school committee for any specific reasons. But you're the link from this board to the student body as a whole. And so it's a big responsibility, but I share Annalea's thoughts. You both were able to help out in various ways with the sophomore seminar. And congratulations to both of you. And Dr. Durkin, this is your 8th student reps that have come through during your
They
tenure.
are, and I knew them when they were in middle school, so they have grown not only in height and a little bit of weight. I can't see that much, but I will say they both have expressed voices over the years, and I really say to you to continue that. Your voice, student voice, is very important to the school committee to hear, and to be active members and serve your constituency well. And I'm very proud of both of you. I've known you in many different capacities, and I think this is a great opportunity for you to make it your own. There is no playbook as to how to be a school committee student rep. So you can create your own and always remember the responsibility you have by sitting at this table. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durkin.
And gentlemen, on behalf of the committee, I welcome you both aboard, and we do want to hear your input. It's very important to us as a school committee. I will add, you got big shoes to fill here. Keith and Annalea, I'm sorry, are Yale bound, and Keith is BC?
Boston
BU.
University.
BU.
I'm sorry. Big shoes to fill, but I'm sure you will do a very fine job in doing that. I know Max a little bit, so, and I'm sorry, like I said to you earlier, I'm sorry the baseball season ended a little prematurely, but you guys got into the playoffs. That's an important thing. And we wish you great luck moving forward, and we wish you all the best for next year. And again, any input you have on any thing that's on the agenda that we're talking about, we want to hear from you, because that's what we're supposed to be here for. So again, thank you both, gentlemen, and Annalea, thank you very much.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. And with that, I would just briefly say that Brandon and I are both looking forward to working with both the administration and the staff, and we are honored, greatly honored with this responsibility has been bestowed upon us by not only our student body but every student in the Attleboro district, and we're excited, and I think we're prepared to fill those big shoes that you.
Yeah, I appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak with you guys and be able to do the best we can to benefit the kids out there, because we both come from this community, we care a lot about it, and we're very interested in seeing what we can do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, moving on to open forum. Open forum, this is a time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for the committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available up at the podium. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Is anybody wishing to speak in open forum tonight? Anyone? Okay. Nobody wishes to speak in open forum. Okay, moving on. So approval of minutes. We have an approval for minutes of 04/02/13.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were doing.
So moved.
I'm sorry, yep.
Okay, second. Okay, we has been second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have approval of minutes for 4/8/13.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have a motion to approve the minutes of 04/22/13.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have a motion to approve the minutes of 05/06/13.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have approval of minutes for 05/20/13.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All motions pass. Moving on to consent agenda. We have a motion to accept the donation in the amount of $3,896.10 from Life Touch to Attleboro High School for the yearbook to be deposited in the gifts donations line.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have a motion to accept the donation in the of two $75 office gift cards from Melissa Bastler and her students who were awarded these gift cards for their efforts in the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society Pennies for Patients Drive to be used for supplies at Hill Roberts School.
So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. We have a motion to accept the donation of 45 science lab timers and 24 AAA batteries with an estimated value of $290 from a Sensitive Corporation to Brennan Middle School Science Department.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion's passes. Okay, under new business, we have a school choice request for vote regarding school year 2013-14 by Dr. Durkin. We did have a open forum meeting here at 6:30 for the public. We did not have anybody that wished to participate, so Dr. Durkin, if you can just kind of start over from the beginning a little bit.
Sure. I'm going to read my motion, but essentially it is my recommendation to the school committee that Attleboro Public Schools not participate in the school choice program for the 2013-14 school year, given the volatility of the need for possible increase in student enrollment that the FY14 budget would not be able to support. Also, it is clear that though we are a comprehensive high school and the CTE program, the Career Technical Education Program, has developed with many new offerings, we have found historically that the CTE program is not a draw for students from outside the community, even though there are certain programs like medical assisting and the pre-engineering that is increasing. And we want to make sure that those programs are preserved for the students who reside in Attleboro and obviously come here from Attleboro, the Attleboro area. And the last reason is that there is financial risk in terms of any student who is enrolled as a school choice student, that if they have a need for extensive services, whether it be through special education or other needs, the district is obligated to provide those needs for the life of the student as they reside in the school system. And again, not being able to predict that, we very much take our role seriously for those students who reside in Attleboro through our special education, our ELL programs, and through that. But obviously, if not residing here, we do not need to be, we need to be wary of any individual who might enter and not be a resident of Attleboro Public Schools. I can take questions and then read the motion if
Thank you, Dr. Durkin. I want to put the motion out there that the Attleboro Public Schools not participate in the school choice program for the 2013-14 school year.
Second.
Okay, discussion. David?
Dr. Durkin, I just had a quick question. Do you have any sense as to how many communities in Massachusetts do exercise this option in the affirmative, or?
I don't.
Okay.
I do believe it's a relatively small number,
Okay.
but some are exploring it for revenue purposes.
Okay.
So, and usually it's from smaller districts who want to be able to compete because they are in an area where enrollment might be declining. You know that our enrollment, though it has not declined, it has not, how should I say, skyrocketed either, but we have been relatively stable over the last 6-7 years, which is a good thing. So though we may be losing students at one point, we peak at certain parts of the year. I do think there are communities whose enrollment are declining that they would like to compete. It is extremely competitive process on the Cape, I can tell you
Yeah.
that. The Cape is all about competing with neighbors to make sure, because there's such a decreasing number of students
Yep.
and young families, as well as families who have children, that it is very competitive there. So that's an area that is really using school choice to their advantage.
So besides a community that, because of a declining population, or at least a declining population of students, who would therefore potentially be subject to less funding based on the education funding formula in Massachusetts, are there any, besides sort of wanting to exercise the option in response to that, are there any variables that you could identify that would cause a district to want to do this, other than sort of building the whole system on the basis of we've got space, so we'll bring in as many kids as we can, so that way our enrollment goes up.
I think if there was a decision to explore like an art magnet or a STEM magnet, in which you wanted to be able to have, obviously, a program that would become stellar and literally a magnet for other communities, that would be a draw from other communities, because that's something that Attleboro would be offering that other places would not.
Which leads to my final question, which is there any way to exercise this option, but to do so in a qualified way, so that way if you exercise the option, it is to go to this specific school for this, that has these specific programs, or is it an all or nothing?
I'm not really sure of
Okay.
that, and I know the regulations have shifted, because generally, school choice is for the district. But given the fact that charter schools are becoming more and more prevalent, and we well know the amount of resources that are going to charters, there could be some consideration looking at those regulations to think about an in-house type of charter that would
Right.
specialize in an area that would draw from other areas. I could think that that is definitely a possibility to be able to consider. But I would be cautious in making sure all the regulations are on the side of the district in terms of making sure the benefit would be strong enough. And any area would need to be open to children with disabilities and children with English language learning needs. So, and you well know that, because that federal law usurps the regulations.
As it should. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think addressing that, Dave, is, I did have this conversation with another school district because of their vocational program. And it was my understanding at the time, speaking with Nancy Sprague, at the time our director and teacher and one of the excellent, that once you open it up, it's open to everything.
Yeah.
You cannot,
Yeah.
just put it into the box and say you can only do this. So
Right.
just wanted to pass that along. But so do we have any more discussion? Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. We have had discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durkin. Okay, our next motion is going to it comes with a recommendation from our high school principal, Bill Runey. And it's a vote to approve the proposed date for Attleboro High School 2014 graduation at Tozier Cassidy Field on the day of June 6, 2014 at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Discussion?
Last minute.
Well,
I believe it's for 2014.
No, it is 2000, yes.
2014.
Mr.
Okay,
Right.
all right,
Said that.
okay.
Yeah, it's next year.
All right.
And since it's Letterman night, that's the reason why Mr. Rooney is not with us tonight to make that in person. But Chris?
Is that a Friday again?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Friday, June.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Our next item on the new business, Technology Advisory Committee update by Tobey Reed at Attleboro High School and Kimberly Janssen of Willett Elementary School. I hope I got that right.
Yes.
Step forward.
And if I may, Mr. Tyler, I want to thank Mr. Reed and Ms. Janssen for being here tonight. They are members of the Technology Advisory Council, which I discussed at the last meeting, and have been more than active members. Mr. Reed is one of the high school teachers, one of many, that clearly uses technology in its broadest sense. Is that fair, Mr. Reed, saying that? And students are very excited about how they do use their instruments in that to be able to do research, et cetera, in all the subject areas. And Ms. Janssen is our technology teacher at Willett, who is doing a number of pilots and extremely forthright in how technology can be integrated in every classroom. The both of them, Mr. Sawyer, who, as you know, is doing interviews tonight with the screening committee at Hill Roberts, Mr. Sawyer felt that you would best represent the council and the committee as to what we're doing, and you've been meeting on a monthly basis. My understanding is as recent as this morning at 7 a.m., if I'm correct. So if I may, if they can just give a little bit of a description of what we've been up to. You do have the technology plan that was done before. This is just an update. But I think as you see their objectives, we're really trying to create a groundswell for what we need to do. So I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. According to Moore's law, the processing speed of computers doubles every 24 months. And he created the law in 1965, and it's proven true since then, which means that students entering kindergarten this year, the computers will be 64 times faster by the time they're seniors in high school. And they're already fast. So technology is changing increasingly rapidly around us, and we're dealing with students now, they're digital natives that have grown up with this technology, as early as kindergarten, and they need to be able to use it responsibly. They need to be able to use it appropriately, as well as the teachers need to be able to use it as well. So the Technology Advisory Council is kind of focused on three main aspects: increasing teacher usage and teacher training, increasing student usage in the classroom and student responsibility, and outreach to community and using technology to leverage some of the community. So those were kind of the three overviews. Ms. Janssen will talk about the first one, and then I'll talk about the second one, and she'll go back to the third one.
Sharing. So thank you for this opportunity to share what we've done all year. I'm going to talk a little bit about staff, our goal or objective for the staff this year. And what we were trying to do is equip staff with the appropriate knowledge as well as resources to get our students learning in the 21st century. So using skills that the core curriculum standards dictates that are embedded into everything we do. So we've provided lots of opportunities for staff training through our professional development days in aspects of Aspen and Microsoft Office. We've done some data management tool training as well as assistive tech training, and using our TeachPoint program for teacher evaluations. So those were our biggies, but of course we've done little trainings along the way, and we continue to do so, and we're planning for next year as we speak, and this morning actually. We've also provided the opportunity for staff to ask for certain pieces of technology that they may want in their classroom. And one thing that we did this year, which I think is somewhat new to the district, is we provided a survey or a mini contest or a mini grant to staff. And we had about 40 folks sign up. And what we offered them was a document camera, a laptop, and a projector. So I thought this was a really neat way of going about getting technology in the classroom by asking staff what they wanted and seeing what their interests were. So we actually had 11 bundles that were distributed throughout the district. 5 were at the elementary school, 2 were at the middle school, and 4 were at the high school. And as a teacher, I felt like that was very well received by the staff. They were very excited to be asked and to be given the opportunity to show their interest in technology. And what they'll then do is now share that with their peers. And this is sort of like a train-the-trainer type of process. So those are 2 examples of what we've done as far as staff updating and training going forward.
The second aspect is working on students and student engagement and getting students to use technology to not just be the recipients of knowledge, but the creators of knowledge. So getting them to create using technology and various technology tools, having them use their own devices in classes where appropriate. We have wireless in the library at the high school, so having kids use that when it's appropriate, or even using their smartphones in classes for educational means, for everything from apps like Socrative to research and creation of web pages, etc. And how to get the students to learn how to use that appropriately. And we're talking a little bit about in the future updating we have right now a acceptable use policy that's a little antiquated, and kind of drafting maybe a responsible use policy in conjunction with the members of the school committee, and working with that to have that be the policy that the students will use. We haven't started really that discussion yet, but it is something we've been talking about, is getting students to use their devices responsibly.
And our last objective was the community and engagement piece, and communication as well. And we talked about ways in which, other than the traditional paper ways of flyers, of ways of engaging the community and getting our message out, whether that be, throughout the district. One aspect of that was that we have created now a standardized web presence. So if you go from the high school all the way down, or to Abacus, or to any of the aspects of Attleboro Public Schools, you'll notice that our website is now consistent, and we're using a program called Revise, or we're working with a company called Revise to do so. Another thing that we've done is we've investigated using social media a little bit, and I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but we do have a Twitter account. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but it's at Attleboro, and then it's _capital PS. And we haven't developed criteria as to what will be posted, but we're posting very succinct right now cancellations and delays on there. So I think it's a safe way to get started into the social media.
I think Mr. Runey uses it at the high school. He has one, yes.
There are others,
Yes,
but this
right,
is
this was the district one.
this
Yeah.
was our broadcast,
Right.
so to speak, as far as cancellation and delays. I think that gets updated probably faster than we hear from you, Dr. Durkin, in the morning.
Would think so.
As well
And
as
better than hearing from me at 5:30 in the morning.
and also our website, because those, I don't know if the group is aware, but our website is updated by teachers. So oftentimes we're waiting for you to get a call,
Yep.
and then it takes a while to get that out. So Twitter was a wonderful way of starting that process into the world of social media, looking at it from a safe aspect. We've also talked a little bit, and we're actually, it's exciting, we're unifying our libraries. So we'll be able to share amongst libraries, and right now all of the libraries are automated, but they're only automated within the school that particular library's in. So we have just initiated a program where we'll be sharing amongst the district. So that's a very powerful way of using technology to share information. So, Tobey, do you have anything else to say about our progress thus far?
No, the document that you've been handed is a work in progress. It by no means is a culminating document. So it's the thing we'll be working on over the next year or two. And I'm sure we'll be back in a year or so to update you with our progress again.
And I think it's important to also note that, as with anything with technology, it's a dynamic process. So anything that we put down on paper, it certainly is something that we're revisiting. But as technology changes, we want to make sure that we're trying to hit on the new innovations and keep current, which...
I'd like to thank both of you, first of all, for all the hard work that you're doing on this, and the whole Technology Advisory Council. And in being truthful, no, I didn't realize we had a Twitter account, even myself. I'll have to check that out. But I would have to say, in my opinion, it is a top priority, the technology in our schools. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of direct questions. I would like for you to answer them, but if you do not have the ability to, I can absolutely understand that. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but I would have to ask, on what grade level do you feel that we're lacking the most in technology right now, through the surveys and whatever other information you've received?
As far as resources, or as far as...
Yeah, I mean, just having the actual devices in there, or not having the support to get those devices as needed, what the teachers might have filled out in their surveys, or that you might know already.
Well, the surveys didn't quite address those particular questions. The surveys were, the survey I think she was referencing was the one where it was kind of a, what would you like and how would you use it, not what does the school need.
Yeah, I mean, is it I think we have a pretty good idea of what's in the computers and in each room and projectors and stuff like that, but I can honestly say until I walked into the middle schools, I didn't really realize that we were that deficient on that level. So, I mean, there has to be one level that's affected more than the other, elementary or middle or high school, in your professional opinions that we should be focusing on, because as you know, the school committee, we're in charge of the financial arm of it, and we need to know where to focus our thoughts.
I think providing the mini grant that we did this year really gave the opportunity for all the schools to become more equalized as far as the technology going on. In our numbers, we had 5 elementary schools who received those kits, And that really was a big deal for the elementary level. I teach at the elementary level, so I'll only speak to that. But they're being used every single day, and of course we'd love to see more of those, I think, throughout the district, or just technology in general,
And the infrastructure, of course,
which is,
needs some support.
Now, have you guys been to any other school districts, surrounding school districts? You have.
I've visited, haven't worked.
This is the really tough question. How many years do you feel that we're behind in Attleboro in technology compared to surrounding districts? And I know that's a really tough question, but we're hearing a lot of different variables and a lot of different years. And again, it's just I'm just asking for an opinion. It's not.
we're certainly behind, but I don't think that's unlike many other districts in neighboring communities. I live in Plainville, very similar situations going on there. North Attleboro has delved into the bring your own device mode, yet without the proper infrastructure, which, you know, all the research that I'm reading right now, without that foundation, many of the other aspects of technology just will not run smoothly as far as bringing your own devices, or we're not really looking at our hardwired instruments anymore or machines. We're looking at laptops and tablets, and all those things start with that fundamental wireless capability. So when we're talking infrastructure, we're talking connectivity, which is, I think,
The biggest impediment.
where we're behind, but
to
where
where we're
many
behind.
schools are behind.
If I may ask, Mr. Reed, if you wouldn't mind sharing sometimes of the frustration of the connectivity, which I know this committee has taken on very seriously. We do need the infrastructure to improve, but it does affect teachers doing their work. You know, you can probably speak to that and in a candid way, at the high school particularly.
Well, I mean, we're getting to a point now where McDonald's, Starbucks, and Dunkin' Donuts are wireless. And I could teach a class more effectively at the Dunkin' Donuts in North Main Street than potentially in my classroom, because without the kids having the ability to look on, even something simple as last week, I wanted to, in the middle of the lesson, it occurred to me that I had the perfect resource to show the kids. It was a 3 or 4 minute YouTube clip that I couldn't do because I couldn't access it, never mind show it. And so I had to scrap it, and by the next day, downloading it, putting it on my laptop, bringing it in and hooking it up, it had lost its importance. Never mind the fact that I think it's still, it fosters a teacher-centered classroom, whereas if you have the technology and the wireless, you can have a more student-centered classroom where the students are actually creating their own learning, which is hard to do when they don't have access to the technology to do it. And most students have some sort of computer in their pocket most of the times. I've done some surveys with my students in the high school, and I think over the last 2 years I've had 1 or 2 students who didn't have a cell phone at all, and most of them have, the students who do not have a cell phone and do not have wireless or internet at home have all replied that they could access the internet within 24 hours if asked to. So-
That's my last question, then I'll open it up to, well, I got one last question that leads into that, then I'll open it up to the committee. In how do we have Aspen, but not up to its full potential? That seems pretty obvious with a couple of teacher conferences that I've had. What do we have to do to utilize the full potential of Aspen? I mean, we have it, it's something we already have in place, so what do you feel we need to support that system to utilize it correctly, where I think it's going to make the teachers' jobs a little easier. It's definitely going to make the parents at home job a lot easier when they can actually just click on something and see a missed homework assignment, or basically get a grade of a test almost immediately after. I mean, so what do we need to do to support that program?
From the high school I think is the most advanced in its Aspen usage, just because we have all of our grades there, we have all of our attendance there, we have the parent portal open, we have all of that for pretty much this entire year. There needs to obviously be some training for the teachers on how to do it, some training for the parents on how to access it, some training for the students on how to access it. I think training is probably the biggest thing needed, because the capability is there.
And we've talked about how that training can happen. And, you know, we're talking technology. We could certainly do training face to face, but we could also set up banks of knowledge where we have websites and videos and YouTube clips that show those, Aspen in particular, just how those tools are working. So I know some folks, we may not be able to fit it into our regular PD development, but we could have resources on our website that could show those different tasks and how they're accomplished.
You know, the high
So-
school has like a tutorial page with some little short videos on how to do things for teachers. That I know teachers have been accessing.
I believe we are opening the parent portal in September for middle school. I believe we are doing that. And regarding the tutorials, the Teach Point system, which we base everything on with our educational evaluation system, Mr. Connor became very famous by doing some tutorials where you could drop down and hear his voice walk you through certain things, and people were very eager about that. So I do think we have to have multiple ways of training people and having that accessible. But I don't want to miss the point and drive home. The infrastructure is very important. The connectivity is extreme. You know, for Tobey to talk about a pivotal moment when he could have used something to explain something better to a student. Not that we're saying it was lost, but you know, those teachable moments are very important for our kids, particularly as we stretch them to higher order learning. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than showing it and having that drive home the point than just telling about it. So I think it's the more we keep doing with infrastructure, the better that's going to be.
I think we had, it was Brenda, Dave, and then I believe Ken. So Brenda?
Well, you kind of touched base on some of the things. I think it's really important. I like the bring your own device. That was a big push, and I know that you mentioned thinking about that. But unfortunately, right now, like you said, you need the infrastructure to be able to do that, and you know, policies and things need to be put in place so it doesn't, you know, get lost. You mentioned a company called Revised. Is that what you mentioned?
Right.
And they were helping you. Now, is that a fee you pay, or is that something they through the grant? Is that what it is that's paying for this? Or
I'm
what
not
is?
sure how it's funded, but basically what they do is they provide the template and the ease of development of our website. So when we need to make a change, it's made instantaneously, as opposed to going through all sorts of coding. It's pretty much the way everyone develops websites now, as opposed to using the traditional coding method or HTML. So
You call someone, you mean? Is that what you mean?
no,
Like,
no.
it's not-
We're as the instructional technologist, and I believe some librarians do this as well.
Oh, within
We're-
house.
Right.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. We're
okay.
still developing. It's just
Oh,
made
okay.
it a means of facilitation, basically,
Okay.
of making the job easier.
Okay, so the company is that's. where
It is,
you-
and I think
you
it's a pretty minimal fee. I'm not quite sure as to the numbers, but.
Right, because I know with our IT department here and things like that, I mean, I know like we utilize a lot of outside sources, which gets costly. So my biggest thing is, what do we have in-house? Our IT department, our, you know, the people we can utilize within, which that's their job, that's what they're supposed to. So that's why sometimes when we always go out of the box and it, you know, it gets costly. So I was just wondering what that revival is. Those are basically the templates you're saying.
Yeah, it's minimal as far. No one's hosting our website. We're hosting our own, but this is just a company that provides the template service, basically. So it's.
And who else is on the advisory committee? The temp.
Lisa Ryder from the high school, Joe Connor from the high school, Kay Campbell.
I have the information.
Little good mix. From
Yeah.
from
Sawyer
that.
chairs that committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marissa.
Marissa.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
Missing a couple people.
In the grant, you received the grant for the bundles, correct?
It wasn't really a
Or
grant.
like-
We called it a grant.
Oh.
It was some money, and I'm not quite sure where that the funding came from.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Within
Where
local
did the
sources.
funding?
Right.
We realigned resources and made it competitive for people to apply for it. So they had to give their rationale, what they would be doing with this document, you know, making sure they knew how to use it and what they were going to use, how they would embed it into instruction.
So it's a competitive grant?
It was competitive in the sense that teachers applied, and then there was a committee, essentially, that looked at those applications, and it was a blind kind of review, and it was determined who would get it. All right?
Correct.
I was just wondering because it never came for us to know that we were actually getting the competitive grant, what you guys
No,
were
we didn't
doing.
get a grant.
Let me
What-
clarify.
Yeah,
The
please.
resources came from within the local budget. We took a chunk of money that we were able to then apply to buying Elmos and through that, and then had teachers, quote, apply for accessing those materials by writing in a competitive type of way, which they would apply for them.
All right, so we basically supplied the hardware and then basically the
We bought the
Elmos- okay,
materials
that's what-
through
all
our
right.
regular resources. We
Okay.
did not get a windfall of anything. We
Right.
wish we could have.
Right.
It was an in-house kind of,
Right.
we called it a grant, but
Yeah.
it was
Right.
more of an in-house
If I-
grant.
If I'm a teacher, I've gotten, this is a material that I could get and compete with that.
Well, I just
We would have
thought-
loved to have given to more people. So we had to figure out a creative way where we could do it fairly rather than, I like Kim and Toby and I'm gonna give it to them.
Right.
So.
No, I thought it
we
was
had many
great
teachers
that, I
come
thought
forward.
it was a grant or something that you guys looked into, you thought outside the box, you brought it in, so that's why I was just wondering, okay.
We'd like to do that, though.
Yes. Absolutely.
David?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but I want to make a quick comment first that I suspect I'll be circling back to. Mr. Reed, you made the comment that on that particular day, you could have taught more effectively at Dunkin' Donuts than at the high school.
I said McDonald's, am I right? Sorry.
Actually, I mentioned
Either
the
way.
law, but I think I went with
Either way, and I've known you, Mr. Reed, for 15 years. You're an outstanding teacher. So, as an outstanding teacher, you potentially could have taught more effectively on that day at Dunkin' Donuts. But I think it's important to remember whenever we talk about technology issues that there's the best technology in the world is not going to replace great teachers. And everything that we're trying to do toward this effort is premised on the idea that our instruction is going to be of a high caliber, and therefore the technology is going to magnify that impact. So
You do not buy technology for the sake of buying technology.
no, exactly, and it's never going to replace the skill that you have in the classroom to impart whatever it is you're imparting on that given day. My first question: you mentioned that you had sort of done a informal survey in terms of how many students had access in one of your classes. Has this committee looked at any efforts to sort of establish some empirical data with regard to what our students' technology capability is at home in terms of where those numbers are, and if so, is that up to date in any way, or is it's something that you'll be
We have
looking
not
at?
discussed that.
Is it something we need to look at? Because whenever we talk about the BYOD philosophy, that is premised largely on the idea that students have a device to bring. And so is that something that the committee is going to be looking at in the
If we got
months
to
ahead?
I think if we got to the point where that was going to be a policy,
Right. I've said philosophy more than policy. But is that on the radar of the committee? I know the chair of the committee is not here right now, but
it's something that we've talked about. We haven't done anything active with it.
okay.
I mean, we don't have the infrastructure to support BYOD anyway, so we haven't gone too far down the road because.
Sure. So my question is premature.
Yeah, why bother finding out what this year's 11th graders can do if we're not going to have it in 3 more years anyway?
Is it fair to say, though, as we address the infrastructure needs and then presumably move toward a BYOD philosophy, that will be something that will be a priority?
Absolutely.
Last year, we did discuss it in the advisory. The team did discuss it, when we weren't looking at the nitty-gritty, the infrastructure. We looked at other school systems and looked at their policies and looked at ways in which they filled the gap with those who had technology and those who didn't. And there are all sorts of, inexpensive options. But
Right.
so we did talk about it even this year a little bit, but infrastructure really gets in the way and it kind of stops the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the infrastructure certainly is a threshold issue that this committee is aware of, and it's one the municipal government's aware of. But I think that's sort of the next logical question that has to be asked. My other question with regard to the responsible use policy, could you just expand a little bit upon that in terms of what exactly that is? Is that, could you expand a little upon that?
Acceptable use policies, which were what most districts have been using for the last 10 or 15 years or so, usually outline what is and what is not acceptable. The problem with that is that things are changing so radically that to dictate any one thing makes it completely outdated policy. Our current policy very specifically talks about MySpace being not allowed, which is easy to now ban.
Unless you're in a band.
Yes. Or 45.
Ow.
I'm 40. And so, like, our policy lists a bunch of things that weren't relevant, very relevant 10 years ago when we wrote it.
Right.
So what they're changing now to is what's called a responsible use policy, which is coming up with guidelines that are, we don't know what you're going to use, but here's how you should use it responsibly.
And does that extend to the responsible use policy? Are we talking about student use and teacher use?
Yes.
We need to have adults, I'm sorry, included in that. We have
Okay.
had some issues.
Yep.
Clearly, and have dealt with them, and I have to say the AEA is very supportive of us setting up guidelines that would be discussed to protect all of us.
And it's an issue that every employer in the
Yes,
country right now
yeah, it would
is
not just
dealing
be
with.
teachers, it would be all employees.
But with regard to student responsible use, I'm just curious if that is really extending to the need to sort of impart lessons about the use of social media and whether or not we're communicating that as early as possible as we need to.
Of course. Yeah.
That was what my question is
Yeah,
to Mr. Reed.
responsible use
Mrs. Janssen.
is designed to get kids as young as kindergarten to learn how to use whatever technology they're using in a responsible manner as a citizen.
Sure.
And as an elementary school instructional technology teacher, we do address that in kindergarten. And, you know, we are finding that students are digital citizens, and of course we need to address it and not make it a taboo, but discuss the benefits of social networking and just technology in general. So I spend a great
It's like
deal
learning
of
to count.
time.
It's as necessary as everything that has always been taught for generations.
And also, the team has also talked about providing, as far as parent engagement, evenings where we talk about internet safety, as other school systems are doing. So I think that is something on our agenda for the next school year.
And the only other thing I would say is, Mr. Reed, you mentioned that you could be back in a year to give an update. It's very possible, I would say even likely, you may be back before a year because of the urgency of this issue. So.
Hopefully for other things other than an update.
Right, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
I think actually Dave Sawyer exemplified our slow and sugar best when he sat there and said, teacher puts in a 92, hits enter, and waits. That went on for about 30 seconds before Dr. Durkin had to stop because he might have continued all night doing that. But I think he exemplified well. But this is a question, and I'm happy that Ms. McCarthy is part of the board with you guys. Question for you, Ms. McCarthy. When it comes to special ed, knowing how helpful especially iPads are in certain situations of teaching kids, would you say that our technology problem with special ed is more still related to the infrastructure, or do we also need devices, or are we able, I know personally that some of the teachers actually bring in their own devices to let the kids use it, but is that useless to them without infrastructure?
No, we actually followed a similar model, what they did with the packets, because it was so successful, that we had 6 iPads that were part of the special ed department, and before we distributed them out to special ed staff, we actually had them write a proposal too and distribute them out, and the staff are loving using them. If a student needs technology per their IEP because of their individual need, that's written into their plan and it's provided to the student. It's the infrastructure does not inhibit them having any technology they need for their IEP, but it does stop those assistive tech pieces and just every other way that technology, not having an infrastructure that supports technology in the classroom, that affects special ed as well.
Okay.
But in terms of an iPad, if you are going to use it for communication reasons or an app, that's not halted by our infrastructure system.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? Well, thank you very much. That was a hard line of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very appreciate what you do, and thank you for coming.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the new business, we have a RETELL initiative, Rethinking Equity in the Teaching of English Language Learners by our Superintendent, Dr. Durkin, and Sonia Walmsley, our ELL coordinator.
Yes.
Dr. Durkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to give you a very brief overview of what RETELL is, and it does stand for that long acronym, as Mr. Tyler stated, Rethinking Equity in the Teaching of English Language Learners. we put together a very small synopsis of what is occurring statewide. This is a major initiative of the State Department. When the State Department changes licensure, that's a big deal. And what that means is everybody who has a license, from superintendent all the way to teachers, must make sure that they have the qualifications to gain that license. And RETELL is an example of where for years individuals did not have enough qualifications to teach or supervise children with English language learners. And we're going to go through a couple of slides. Ms. Walmsley has done an incredible job of keeping us on track. You can imagine taking all of the educators, all of them here, to be able to say of what needs to get done, and we're on a very tight timeline. So essentially, I need the clicker, if I may. Thank you. Okay. What we're looking at is that English language learners, which is our fastest growing population in Attleboro, but guess what? It's the fastest growing population in the state, is to really deal with that every teacher will have skills to be able to teach children with English language learning needs, because you cannot predict who is going to be in front of you. And the chances that you're going to have a student who has English language learning needs is pretty high. So, and basically we're going to work toward closing those proficiency gaps and ensuring all students are college and career ready. We're really looking as a team to have what's called an English second language voice. And what the whole purpose is to develop better collaborations between regular educators and ESL teachers. Rather than a push-out model or a push-in model, every teacher has those skills and capacities. And I'm going to have Sonia, who has really been the point person for this, and has spent endless hours to make this organized for us, because we do have a timeline. We are part of cohort 2, am I right?
Correct.
Cohort 1 are those cities where there is a larger percentage of ELL learners. Cohort 2, though, we're not that far behind, and we have a certain time frame that we must meet this. As we go through this, I want to say this to not only the school committee, but to my teachers watching at home. You must reach these qualifications, or one, you will not have your license renewed and will be out of a job, or if you don't prepare for yourself as you are in college to get this endorsement, you will not be able to get a job. So that's how serious we are in terms of making sure. That's why I said licensure is very important. So Sonia, maybe you can go through this to talk about the different areas of what this means in getting the licensure.
Thank you, Dr. Durkin, for inviting me tonight. Hola, everyone. I am here to share a little bit with you what is this about. This initiative will be impact all administrators and teachers in Massachusetts. It's an initiative that started this current year, 2012-2013, and will be impact to Attleboro District next school year. We will start processing all the information over this summer, and by October, a lot of our educators will be completing requirements needed in order to get their renewal license or a new license or any other step they need in order to work in Massachusetts. What this is telling us is that it's an initiative that covers different things. All of them are aligned, but the most important ones are the WIDA, that is the new frameworks for ELLs, exactly like the Common Core provide new standards for English and math. The ELL students also will have new standards that we already start training our teachers. It's already in place here in the district. And exactly with the access test, that is the state test where they provide us with the information what proficiency level each student is. We do this test every January. From now to the future will be every year in January our ELL students take this test. In addition is the Shelter English Immersion Endorsement course. This is what Dr. Durkin was talking about. It's one of the requirements our teachers need to complete in order to get their license renewal.
Just so you know, Massachusetts is one of 3 states that is under the Department of Justice. This began with a lawsuit in terms of seeing that children with English language learner needs were being underserved. And it's Arizona, California, and Massachusetts. Why those 3 states? Because all 3 of them had referendums. Remember the UNS initiative, which basically took an educational issue and made it a politicized one, that English would have to be taught in all classrooms, and it was voted on and was passed. Those years produced many, many students who could not be proficient in classrooms because they didn't get the services that were there. You can see that since this is in Massachusetts, you can see how much we've increased. We've almost doubled, 64% since 2000. So the chances are, I believe there's 346 out of 360 school districts that have ELL students. And I think the other 14 are going to come very quickly as we move through it. You can see that there's an achievement gap as we look at non-ELL, and that should be an E, not FEL, and as well as formerly ELL and ELL students, that our students should be achieving well, but they are not. There is a gap, and largely that's because they have not received the appropriate services that are needed. So why RETELL? If you remember, we gave you a report every year of how many of our teachers were category trained. It was category 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Attleboro did very well because we have the best teachers in the state here. And people volunteered and said, yes, I'm going to take this training. Well, that worked only to a certain point, and other communities in the state, it wasn't going fast enough. And because it was voluntary, some people said, I don't need to do that. So what happened was they reviewed the category training. What they have done, which is important, is people who have taken the category training, that was not for naught. That those individuals will not have to take as extensive a course or as extensive a training as if they did not take it. So Sonia has done the monumental task of taking all 400 members of our, plus the 25 administrators, and see where they are in terms of what their needs are. And your responsibility is to make sure those courses are taken. For the next year, the State Department is offering at no cost these courses, and they are they're very rigorous in terms of making sure we'd like them done in Attleboro. One of our challenges is making sure the instructors are being, we don't have enough instructors for it statewide, and you have to be able, and we're encouraging some of our own, right? They can't say no to us yet, Sonia. Some of our teachers who would be good enough. I mean, of course, there's a significant allocation for them to do that, but it does require amount of time to be able to teach the course. So you can see that the Department of Justice is looking very closely as to what we are doing, as well as in California and Arizona. So the options are, I'm going to have Sonia go through these. When we talk incumbent core academic teachers, we're talking teachers who teach the 4 academic subjects: social studies, science, English language arts, and math. And of course, in elementary and middle, that's largely everyone, and what the challenges are in terms of who gets what.
Yes, something that we need to keep in mind, seeing the big picture, is our population. At 2000 and probably 1 or 2, we have less than 100 students that are in our program. Right now we have 415 current students, and around 200 of students that we exit, those former ELL students, that we need to monitor. That means it's around 1,600 students we have in this category.
Not to interrupt you, Sonia, but I do want to say the students that we're exiting are doing very well. They are scoring in the proficient and advanced range in MCAS. So we are doing a very good job with our ELL services, and we're very proud of that. That is not the norm across the state. So what we are doing is going on very well, but we have to make sure we monitor carefully so they don't slip back.
Correct. This year we complete and we pass all the, I would say, the small IWP for ELLs in Attleboro. From 63 districts, we are one of the 14 districts who made it. That means it's around the first time we do it in the past 7 years. It's a big accomplishment that we did this year, thanks to all the staff and administrators that support our kids. Going back to the requirements needed, is 3 different courses they will offer for teachers and 1 for administrators.
Yeah, 1 for
One for
administrators,
administrators.
yes.
That means 4. And it's different layers of this. The first group is the teachers who do not have any trainer at all. And these apply for any teacher that have 1 or more ELL students in their classroom. Math teachers, science teachers, social studies teachers, English teachers, SPED teachers. And for the administrators who go to those classrooms to supervise that teacher. Now, for this first group, teachers who have 1 category training, one of those courses Dr. Durkin explained, is 3 of them, then they will be taken priority, and those teachers will need to have a course of 45 hours, 11 face-to-face, I would say meetings, and the rest will be online. The second group of teachers, those teachers who have 2 category trainings, because we did a fantastic job here recruiting and training these teachers, will be a big group who will be taking a bridge course, that is a long course, that will be for 24 hours of training. And those ones who really listen to us and attend 3 of the category trainings will have to attend just 10 hours training. That means they really appreciate and recognize the effort each district did in the past to train the teachers. For the administrators, in October, they will start a course in order to supervise those teachers who have ELL students in their classrooms. And the course for administrators will be 15 hours, 5 3-hour section for each of them.
And when administrators, that's everyone from superintendents, so it includes everyone. So, for example, any license that's up in 2 years, you have to demonstrate you took that course, or your licensure will not be renewed. So, we can't stress that enough.
Correct. And something that all the teachers who are listening to us tonight needs to know if it will be a good way to qualify without taking that course is to have an ESL license, or apply and pass the MTEL test next year that will be provided for ESL teachers and sheltered English immersion teachers. That means those are ways to avoid taking that 44 hours course.
And the coursework, just so you know, is going to be very applicable. So it's why they're asking first for teachers who have students with ELL needs will be likely select 3 students in your class. You're going to take a language sample, now come back to the class, we're going to review this, now go back to your classroom and try this. It's really very much application, which I think is excellent, which is what we want. So we're hoping to have, how many sections in Attleboro we're hoping for?
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's a big piece,
Yeah.
because what the state have been telling us is will be for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
We need to do groups of teachers, and the
No more than 30 in a class, yeah.
correct. The minimum is 25, the maximum is 30, and that will be done for all the teachers. The data, the state have the data. We don't provide data to the state. They tell us what teachers are taking this course. That means the agreement is to work with the districts, plan those schedules, and see how we can fit all those 180 teachers we have in Attleboro to train the first 3 years. They will target these 180 teachers first, no cost, they will be free. After that, every person is in their own.
Right.
That means if I offer you to take the course and you say, no, I really want to wait and I don't want to take it this year, that means you are missing the train there, and you will be in your own by 2016.
And you need to pay for a course yourself, either at Bridgewater or some other location. So I think the state is really trying to accommodate. We're hoping to have a number of sessions here in Attleboro and, be able to time them so that teachers will be able to take them. The key is making sure we get the good instructors. And the state's being very explicit as to who can teach the course. Even though it's a scripted course, they want to make sure that there's a consistent delivery of that. So that's one of the challenges.
It is.
Yeah, mine's more on the comment first. I mean, obviously, the school district has made great strides in ELO, and we know that you've been the front leader of this, Ms. Walmsley, and we really appreciate that. I think my comment is more, there's a high price to pay, I guess, for being number one in education in the United States, because Massachusetts is just, I mean, new testing, new evaluations, new standards, new licenses. I mean, it's
Imagine if we
just-
weren't number one.
I don't know how you keep track of it. I really don't.
Wow.
It's just, it's mind-boggling. It seems like every 2 weeks that we sit here, there's something new thrown at Massachusetts as a whole. They're not picking on the district, I realize, but it's just, to me, it's just kind of mind-boggling, and I know we have a lot of great people looking after things, because I really don't know how you can control it sometimes. And I wish you all the luck with this new program, obviously. And I think it has to be stated that, I think as Dr. Durkin said, that ELL leads to a lot of many other things when it comes to our test scores. I think there's a huge residual effect on that. So again, I just want to say thank you, and at this time I'll open it up if there's any questions from the committee about the retail overview. Dave?
I'm just curious, given the increase in need that you talked about at the beginning of the presentation, is there reason to think that the state at the higher ed level is prioritizing this the way that they need to with regard to college students who want to become educators? Has there been a shift in priorities at that level?
Yes, they have been addressing that part too. Colleges now will be offering, and as a requirement for graduators, new graduators, to take this course before they
Pre-service.
Yes, and they have a time limit now. Will be by 2014. Those new educators will have that course.
Thank you.
Ken?
Real quick question. You always give us this, well, you gave us a number last year as well. How many kindergartens do we have with how many different languages?
And their teacher is standing right here. Stand up. Stand up. Okay.
How many different languages are kindergartens speaking this year in one classroom?
This year we have 10.
Only 10?
Last year we had 12. I'm slacking a
And
little.
then we have one whole class of.
And they're all reading and going on to first grade, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Correct, but in the whole district we have around 49 different languages.
Yes.
Amazing. I don't think people at home realize how hard your jobs really are, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fonzie.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the new business is the Richardson Building Plans for Special Education by Ms. McCarvey, our Director of Special Education and Student Support Services.
Sure. I actually also have Andy Cerrone, who I'm going to ask to come sit up here. He is the career specialist at the high school. And I wanted to bring to you an overview of one of the projects we're looking to do for special education. Transition plans are an essential part of every student's IEP once they turn 14, and it's something that I'm looking to explore as a district, is what type of transitional planning can we do for students and make sure that we're reaching all of our students and giving them vocational opportunities, living opportunities, and really reaching the whole student, so that whether or not they leave us after the traditional 4 years and go off to a post-secondary setting, or they leave us at their 22nd birthday, they're prepared to have a full life at that point, and a meaningful life that is aligned to their vision for their future. So I always am exploring different options, and I was very excited. About a week and a half ago, Andy works with the School to Career Partnership, and he was doing planning for this summer for their programming, and thought about special ed, and thought about how he could partner with our department to bring a special ed project to life this summer. And so I just wanted to bring you an overview of that, and I'm going to let Andy speak very briefly to the project proposal and what we're looking to do.
All right. So during the summer, we typically run a 5 or 6 week summer work and learning program, which is geared towards students that have certain barriers. Typically, the students do carry an IEP or a 504. Over 90% of our students usually do. And what we do after we identify them and certify them, we have them work with us on various sites where they're able to learn basic skills, whether it's maintenance or in culinary or many other various areas, depending on what kind of resources we have that particular summer. Something we're doing this year is a flower pot project where the students will be building flower boxes and planting flowers, learning about flowers, building soft skills with talking with people about the flowers, and working on some writing skills to describe like the watering habits and so forth about the flowers that need to be taken care of. Something that we had spoken about was regarding the Richardson School, using this opportunity that we have these resources to build these flowers and put them out in the community to tie that together, so that maybe we could start working on the aesthetics of the school building, not necessarily touching any of the bigger projects, but offering the students the opportunity to take some pride in the school, in their community, and being able to do something within an area where a lot of the students do live, right around Pine Street. So that's basically the basic premise of the proposal that we're working on. Something we discussed doing in the future with it, depending on resources, of course, is further expanding the project to include a permaculture garden outside of the Richardson School where the sandbox for Markman was. A permaculture garden is essentially a garden that is designed to be perennial and to be low maintenance. So, for example, you can plant things such as asparagus and artichokes and things like that that come back every year and are low maintenance. You don't have to do a whole lot, and it helps beautify the area, and it offers an opportunity for the students that are at the school to take care of it and develop the skills to, whether it's learning how to cook it, whether it's learning how to grow it, to understand what's making it succeed or not succeed. There's a lot of different ways that it can be used, and that's pretty much the basic premises of what we wanted to do.
So the hope is that this could turn into a long-range project for our 18 to 22-year-old population, and they would be able to keep up the aesthetic outside of the Richardson building as we continue towards moving towards creating a full program that meets the needs of our students who are 18 to 22.
Have any questions? Dave?
Just, I hope it turns into a long-term program as well, and if you could maybe come back and update us, and if there are photos of the
I'd love
work
to.
product, we'd love to see them. So.
Yep. Love that. Thank you.
That's right. I mean, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity. It's definitely a win-win situation for all, and I think it's a project where there's going to be a lot of great pride taken into it, and that's really how you get people vested, and I feel great pride in doing something. So I thank you both for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on the new business, transportation update by Tom Rose, our business manager. Tom, I would like to just state the committee is almost fully aware of some of the surrounding details of this. So I would really like you to just briefly touch on how we got there and what the plan is moving forward. I don't think we need to go into too great of a detail. So Tom?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much detail on how we got there. I'll be very, very brief. The deficit right now is 197. The way that we got there was primarily through the under budgeting in salaries and transportation expenses in the special ed, McKinney Vento, and out of district. If you combine all those, we come to 197. Earlier this evening, I was taking a look at my estimate. Salaries in September versus salaries on the latest report, the difference was $3,000. But the primary wrinkle, the primary mistake that I made is I should have let the mayor and the school committee know earlier than I did. But that's pretty much how we got there. Special ed transportation, regular transportation, and homeless, and an under budget on the salaries. So that's the figure's 197. The way that we get out of it is by tapping into the savings that we have in salaries. Specifically, there's going to be a finance committee meeting on Wednesday night, and at that finance committee meeting, the reports will show that there's $537,568 of breakage or positive salary budgets between the teachers / administrators and the paras and the secretaries. And so my recommendation would be that we tap into some of this money to fix the transportation deficit.
Okay. Now, just to retract a little bit, for somebody who hasn't paid attention, the municipal council did vote last Thursday night to approve the school to utilize net school spending in the transportation line. And transportation is the responsibility of the city. So we just want to make sure that that's clear there first. But in this special circumstance, because of the timeness of the matter, I should say, the deficit, the city council did vote unanimously to allow the schools to go into debt school spending to offset this cost.
Yes.
Is that correct, Don?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so your plan is to go to the finance committee and look over the avenues, or what is your plan moving forward now to meet the obligation?
Plan moving forward now is this, for the school committee tonight to say, go ahead, school department, fix the deficit, fix all of it, fix all 197, take care of it, and let this problem go away. And if you, school committee, give me that authorization, then I'll work with the staff, and frankly, the problem will be resolved by the end of the week, because we have the funds available. We are gonna have the finance committee meeting on the 5th, it's just our regular monthly finance committee meeting, which is good, and it provides with updates and so on, but, I mean, it's interesting to note that the breakage of the positive salary budget on the report from the 15th of May was 499, 428, 61. From the 5th of June, which we're going to discuss on Wednesday, 501, 402, 73. So the message I'm trying to convey, it's not like, oh my God, these numbers could swing significantly within the next 2 or 3 weeks. That number varied by approximately $2,000 in 1 month. So these are funds that I know full well we have available to us. And if the school committee approves, I'd like to fix the deficit by you tapping into that money.
Okay, and before I open it up to the committee members,
Yes.
Tom, what's the plan moving forward to notify those on the city side of potential deficits?
The plan moving forward, very simply, Mr. Chair, is monthly reports and not quarterly updates. And by doing it on a monthly basis and developing the estimates on a monthly basis, the communication will go to the mayor and to the city council quicker than I've been providing the information to them in this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I believe we got Ken and then Brenda.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry,
I'm
thank you,
sorry.
Dr. Durkin. I didn't say this, but I should have said it. As in with FY13, first goes the finance committee, then goes the school committee, then goes to the mayor, and then goes to city council. That same format's gonna follow in FY14. Thanks, Dr. Durkin.
Exactly. Thank you, Tom, for adding that. So I said we got Ken and I believe Brenda.
Yep.
Okay, Ken.
All right, first, I want to make it clear, we do have this overage in our salary account, but I want to make it clear that Tom Rose does not have $500,000 sitting in his office, not in bags of money. That money was actually, we actually had a lot of talking about if we could somehow come in the black this year. We talked about repairing parking lots, some that are frankly unsafe. It's like off-roading through some of these parking lots. Some of them we have a prediction of only 1 year left. We have problems with a pool, which is pretty much, just those two costs alone could eat away at $500,000. So Tom, I want to ask you this. We did, in a conversation between you, myself, and the chair, we did mention out of the 197, 75,000 we know is directly to homeless and special needs. We offered to maybe cover 125 and let the city cover 75.
Yes.
The response to that was no.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, yes. Yes, Mr. Parent. The response was no, and the reason the response was no is pretty much the mayor said, Tom, I don't have any money. If I had money, I would give it to you. I don't have any money. And that's why the response was no.
Okay, because I mean, the school committee could step in because apparently the city's broke and they have no money to give. I'm just concerned that 75,000 never got past that office. I talked to some city councils, they never heard about that we offered to pay the lion's share of this and maybe offer 75,000 to just for the city to pay. I mean, unfortunately, we're stuck in a rock and a hard place here because they made it clear that if we don't pay this, we don't pay the city bill, the city's going to kind of shut down the transportation for the students. So we do have to come up with the money, otherwise our kids won't be bused. But I think this perception that the school committee has all this extra money laying around is awful because, as I said, we have a lot of problems that we need to fix. Maybe the city, since they're broke, could maybe help us out with the parking lots. They have trucks, they have supplies, they have people to do it. Since we can't, we probably won't be able to do anything for our sidewalks, for our safety of our students, for the safety of our parents driving in there. So, since we won't do that, maybe we should go to the city and ask them to help us out on that end. That would be a non-cash way to help us out. I think that's all I got to say, Mike.
Thank you, Ken. Brenda?
Mr.
Yes.
Sitting here and not asking these questions, it would be very irresponsible of me. So with that being said, first, this hurts. This really, really hurts. Okay? And just to fix it, take care of it, make it go away, that doesn't make me sleep at night. With the budgets that we have, the money that we don't have, and for this to happen, shame. And my question is, because I have to answer the people that why I sit here, is how did this happen? How did administration, and I guess I put this toward all of you, how did this happen with the shortfall?
Sure.
Again, we've had shortfalls before. Who is checking? Who is double checking? Who's not looking? Who is looking but is not looking in the right direction? Because this hurts. This really, really hurts. And this really bothers me personally, educationally, system-wide. It really hurts.
Sure.
I'm not trying to point fingers.
No, understand.
But we have people in place, administrators, that get paid good money, who are educated, who are supposed to know what they're doing, and to have this happen in a time that this is no good time to have this happen, but
Understand.
for now, and what we're fighting for now, and then to say, sorry, it's not even in our budget, but the money that we have in the black to put toward this, it's hurting. It really, really is. I'm not happy. I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know how I feel. I've always been open, but I need to know from administration what happened.
Sure. Two messages. First message is in regard to how it happened, and the second message is the communication. As far as the first message, how it happened, it was a combination of 4 items that, quite frankly, were under budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year. Salaries, McKinney-Vento or homeless transportation, out of district or special ed transportation, and then the Bloom transportation contract. Those are the primary 4 components. At the beginning of the year, the request was put in for, we're going to need some extra money. And so the city kicked in approximately $475,000. And that occurred as a result of the first quarterly transportation report. I took the decision, or I made the decision, that I was going to wait until the 3rd quarter report to, quite frankly, project the deficit, because I certainly didn't want to do it in September, because it was September 11th when the report was prepared. And the second report was prepared January 11th, and frankly, we had approximately 4 months of data, but we still had 6 more months to go. So my perspective was, and I said it in the report, the second quarterly report, I'm going to wait until the 3rd quarter report to make the projection. But the problem is this, which now leads into the communication. Our Finance Committee meeting for April was April 3rd. In retrospect, what I should have done is I should have prepared the report prior to the 3rd quarter ending. I should have cut it off like on the 20th of March or the 15th of March, prepared the report, got it to the Finance Committee for April 3rd, the School Committee for probably about a week later, and got it over to the Mayor's office approximately a month to 5 weeks earlier than I did. If I had done that, there's a very good chance that the mayor may have been able to say, well, we can help you out with a little bit. Or maybe the mayor could have said we could have done everything. But the bottom line is, by waiting until the end of the 3rd quarter, by waiting until after March 31, and then delivering the report in May instead of April, it put the mayor in a situation where he didn't have any money left over. So the bottom line is the 4 components as to why under budgeting and salaries, homeless transportation, out of district transportation, and then the actual contract itself. But the second thread, and frankly, probably the most important thread, was the communication thread. And on the communication thread, I was late.
I have nothing to say.
Bob?
I'm just this is very concerning. We're looking at a new budget. We're $1.2 million short from the necessities that we need to give our children in the district the basics that they need for their education, not even any extras.
Yes.
So we're looking ahead at having to cut $1.2 million. Now we have a transportation budget, which we're not responsible for, and basically I'm hearing if we don't pay it, then no transportation for these children. So again, it falls on our shoulders where we don't have the money to pay this. This is ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. This is not our responsibility. We already have to fight for $1.2 million. Like Mr. Parent said, the city needs to be approached to say, can you meet us to help us pay for some of this? Because it's at the point where we're already $1.2 million short next year, and now we're going to pull this out of a budget that we don't have. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. And to say the only thing, if we don't pay it, these children don't get a ride to school. That's not a solution. We can't have this. It's not effective. It's hurting the children in the district, and we're getting the short end of the stick for the schools. And it's about time that the parents and everybody come forth and realize that this doesn't have to be. And we have to fight to get the funds we need to get our children to school and to provide the education that they need, pay our teachers who are there on the front lines and not having to worry about cutting $1.2 million and now add this on top of it. Where does it end? Where does it end? It's not fair to the children. It's not fair to everyone who works so hard in the school systems. It's just, I find it ridiculous. And, you know, it's all coming to a head. What are we going to do? Every year we're going to be $1 million short? We have to come to some resolution here. And again, we as a school committee, this is not, as we said, transportation is not our responsibility. So I have a real big problem with this, saying that here and now it's on your shoulders, when it's not even our responsibility.
Okay, I know we have more questions out there. What I'm gonna do respectfully is put the motion out. I'm gonna ask for it to respectfully be seconded, so we can further discussion on it. I'm gonna make a motion to authorize the school administration to utilize net school spending funds to cover the deficit costs that exist in the FY13 transportation line. Mr. Rose, is that correct? Please. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Ken?
Two things. First, Mr. Rose has, to a fault, committed fault on this. You know, it's like almost going beyond. And I just said, you know, so maybe some things could have been looked at a little bit better. But the one that keeps sticking back up to me is $75,000. I know it's from Vinking Bento. I know it's a sped. There's certain things. I mean, this whole thing is like a moving target shooting an arrow at. It's bussing. There could be people in. There could be out. You have to transport kids. And I'm almost. That's why, and I thought for once had a good idea, and I said, why don't we suggest that we pick up the lion's share and have the city go, maybe pay $75K, and we cover the rest. So for that reason, Mike, I'd ask you to amend your motion. You said to cover the deficit, maybe to say to cover all or partial.
Cover the total deficit, Ken.
So you're gonna leave the motion at cover the total deficit?
Yes.
You want to amend it? You can amend it,
You can make the amendment.
Mr. Parent.
I would just make an amendment to cover the total or partial or part of the deficit.
I'll second that.
Your motion is just to cover part of the deficit?
No, cover total or part of the deficit. Leave it open to allow us to cover only a partial piece if we could somehow.
Okay.
Give it so.
We have that, and it has been seconded by Ms. Furtado. Mr. Murphy?
I just have a clarifying question with regard to the amendment. This would essentially, the administration would retain the authorization of the school committee to pay for this deficit in its entirety, but the administration would also essentially be authorized to confer with the municipal government to determine whether or not there's a viable option to share the costs. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, I would still like to, as I said, from my knowledge on maybe most city councils, and other ones I haven't talked to didn't know anything about splitting up the costs. So I would like them to have the opportunity to at least hear this and maybe talk amongst themselves as only partial. So
The reason I ask is that even if we were to pass this motion with the amendment, I think that given the city council's vote of last week, coupled with our vote, and I certainly think, I don't see no reason why Mr. Rose would not confer one more time with the city government, although I think it's clear from the chairman's comments that that conference is sort of already taken place. But would have no objection to one more conversation to make sure that still don't have the 75,000, okay, and then it's paid, as long as the authorization stays intact. Because given the timeliness concerns, we don't want to delay Mr. Rose from paying this any more than he's already delayed. Is that? But I don't think your amendment does that. Do you agree with that, Mr. Parent?
I agree with that. My amendment would simply, as you said, just let Tom ask one more time.
Yeah, and I think as a general rule, if there's anyone that wants to share costs for anything we authorize you to pay, you should know that you should, if anyone else ever wants to pick up part of the bill.
I'm just afraid that we're locked into 197 no matter what if we don't amend it to say all partial.
I don't know that there's any reason not to allow for that flexibility, except that I think we should know, because this is a conversation that's gone back and forth between the school department and the municipal government. And I think we generally know what the viable options are, and as long as there's no delay, I don't think anyone should be surprised when we're briefed by Mr. Rose and the full amount has been paid. But I don't know that there's any reason not to allow for that flexibility.
No, I mean, I'll add in, obviously, I don't sit here as a happy camper tonight whatsoever. But there's no use to keep debating the issue. I think you gotta find out from the city. I was notified of this, and as soon as I was in touch with the administration, with the mayor, and the budget manager, Barry, the class administrator. They said there's no funds on the city side. I don't have any problem with Ken's motion, don't get me wrong, but there's two stipulations here that I do worry about. Number one, and I believe, I would want Tom to back this up, but I believe our next billing cycle is June 10th, or somewhere in that general range for transportation. And I think number two, being the override factor, is the city auditor, Deb Gould, has notified us and the city that she is not going to certify any type of payments unless this transfer is completed by the school side. And that's where I'm really worried. That's when one of the basic needs that we provide in transportation would not be there. So time is of essence, and I can understand reaching out to the city one more time, but I would have to say it goes back to the old thing. How many different ways can we say no? You know what I mean? And it's just, I've been beating this door down for the last, 3 or 4 days, or since I heard about it, or probably close to a week. Asking, begging, whatever it needs to be done, it's not there. Too late in the year, those funds have already been allotted to other city needs. And I think we just have to move forward and make sure that, like any mistake, that we make plans to make sure that they don't repeat themselves in the future. And I think that Tom and the city is going to make sure they work on that, and we as a school committee are going to be working right with them to do so. But like I said, I don't have any problem with your amended motion, Ken. But through my discussions, which have been a lot lately with the city, they have no funds whatsoever to give to this. Not 2,000 and not 190-something thousand. Dave?
And so given that, I think, again, this flexibility, I think as long as you don't, Mr. Rose, you don't see that any reason that it would tie your hands in any way, I think the important thing is that we recognize the timeliness of it. And as the chairman said, it's not like, if the municipal government had been notified earlier, there's a potential that this cost could have been shared. We know essentially that that's probably not going to be the case unless there's some variable changes, and I think Mr. Parent's motion is wise to allow for that. Who knows? I don't think it's going to happen. The only two other things that I would say are this. First of all, to Mr. Rose, your candor in terms of accepting responsibility is extremely commendable. It was a mistake. It's not one that should happen again, but I very much appreciate your willingness to own up to the mistake that was made. The second thing, this is a very, not that small, it's $200,000, but in the grand scheme of the budget and each budget that we deal with every year of tens of millions of dollars, this is a small piece of a much larger conversation that the community has to have, I think, with regard to its investment and commitment to education. It's a discussion that we have to have at the school committee level. It's a discussion that the municipal government has to have. And most importantly, it's a discussion I think that the community as a whole has to have in terms of what type of investment are we making. That being said, I think the way that we get the community to want to make a greater investment and make a greater commitment is demonstrating that, one, that these types of mistakes aren't made, and two, that we accept responsibility when they do, as Mr. Rose has, and as a school system, we need to. Because otherwise, if we're not able to sort of build that trust and demonstrate that, you know, we have that high level of competency to use the funds that we have, then I think it becomes that much harder to make a compelling argument throughout the city government and to the community of the need to invest and commit to education, financially and otherwise. So I think this is an example of, frankly, the school system demonstrating that when a mistake is made, we'll take responsibility for it, and that, you know, we're going to make sure that we put in place the practices that are necessary to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you. Ken?
Just 2 quick points. I mean, as I said, I tried to, I guess, broker the 75,000. City has a $110 million budget, or $110 million plus budget. I didn't think as for 75,000 out of 110 was too much. But I guess my concern is now looking forward, since this is almost behind us. Fiscal year 14, is our bus and budget going to cover it?
The answer is yes. We have a transportation budget of approximately $3,085,000. There's an increase of $125,000 built into that budget, and yes, we will
Unfortunately,
cover.
we said the same thing last year.
Yeah,
Our
but-
number was fine too. So I would just,
But
I'm sure you've relooked at it, you've given all this press.
Pardon?
Mr. Rose wasn't here last year.
Yeah, I know that,
Okay.
but I'm saying we had the same conversation
Oh,
last year,
okay.
you know?
All right.
That's why we got the 476, we said
Yeah.
we should be fine now.
Well,
We weren't, so.
if I could jump in.
But talk about taking responsibility. Just took responsibility for a different business.
Yeah, I know that wasn't his number.
No, but you're right, the conversation.
We have this conversation, so I would, if you could just, I'm sure you've relooked at the number a million times, but we need to be firm. We need to-
We are, and there are a couple of factors, and I've worked closely with the transportation office, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
That transportation budget that we have set aside for FY14 will be sufficient.
So only thing I'd expect to see next year if we go over is because we have a big number of additional homeless kids or special needs kids moving in the district. It's the only way I think that we could possibly go up, and
I
that would be
completely agree.
unpredictable.
I
Okay.
completely agree with you, Mr.
Thank
Harris.
you.
You're welcome.
I just had one quick question.
Chris?
McKinney-Vento, I thought the McKinney-Vento transportation was supposed to be covered by the state. What happened to that? Isn't there a circuit breaker fund for that?
He didn't. Go ahead, Tom.
The answer to your question, Mr. O'Neill, is we did receive from the city/state $124,000 this fiscal year. To the city's credit, they only received $109,000. It was supposed to be a 1-to-1 match based on our expenses that we incurred through June 30 last year, and that didn't happen. But close, 109,000 is pretty good. But the mayor said, listen, we promised 124, we'll give you 124. And so with that appropriation that occurred back in November, there was approximately an extra $15,000 that was kicked in from the city to bring that flush for from FY12 for FY13's use.
And then we went 75 beyond that. Is that what I'm
No.
taking from this?
No, can I jump in, Mr. Parent?
Just
Or would you, Mr. Parent, why don't you answer the question?
Yeah.
75 is made of McKinney-Vento and special ed. That's-
And special ed, okay, thank you.
So
All
I
right.
think, I want to say 2842, something like that. 2847, something like that.
28,000.
McKinney-Vento, 47 in special ed.
Still, that's a lot of money.
I think the whole thing where, you know, Suzanne bumped the state auditor, did declare it an unfunded mandate, but it still was not funded at 100% coming back to the municipality.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any more discussion? All right, we have an amended motion on the floor. And that motion is to approve the school administration utilization of net school spending funds to cover the deficit, full or partial costs that exist in the FY13 transportation line. And it has been seconded by Ms. Furtado. We've had our discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye.
Aye.
There are 2 opposed. Abstain? Okay. I'm sorry, Bill, did you vote on that motion? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. The motion passed, Rudy. Thank you. So we have to vote procedurally on the first motion, but I asked everybody to vote no. So, since we've already passed the amended one, the original motion was to approve the school administration to utilization of net school spending fund to cover the deficit full cost that exists in the FY13 transportation line. And that was seconded by Mr. Lawson, I believe.
Just a quick discussion point, Mr. Rose, I know you know this because you've seen this conversation, but this is not encouragement to go with sort of a full-throated negotiation because we want the flexibility is there, but since we generally know the answer, the important piece is that this bill get paid, obviously.
Understand.
Which
Understand. Okay. Thank you.
I knew that you did, but just.
All those in favor? Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Motion fails. Yes, Mr. Rose, I think as you got by the environment of the room here, you have to make absolutely sure that any type of talks you have with the city proceed, making sure that we have proper payment authorization for the next transportation report. So, okay, Tom?
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have the personnel report that's going to be given by Dr. Durkin in absence of David Sawyer tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one retirement. Valerie Lowell, a paraprofessional at the Network Program, will be retiring as of June 29th, 2013. We have one resignation. Anne Marie Cicero, the Assistant Coordinator, Site Manager for Abacus at Thatcher. She will be resigning as of July 26th, 2013. And we have two appointments. Tanya Jackson will be a teacher in visual arts at Brennan, beginning on September 3rd at the beginning of the school year, and Duncan Wells will be a teacher in ELA Social Studies at Coelho on September 3rd, also beginning the school year. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Before we move on to the committee reports, I just want to touch briefly on the FY14 budget. It was not on the agenda because it wasn't voted on, talked about in front of the city council until last Thursday night. I think as we all know by now, the city side or the mayor has put a budget forward that leaves us a shortfall of $1.2 million with the budget that we passed as a full school committee. There's some hard decisions that are going to have to be made and where they're going to come from. This is again something I've spoken with the school administration about, and with the city side. And the mayor has stood pretty steadfast. This is the number. That's it. There's no more funds to be given. The city side has taken huge hits in the percentage of like 33% over the last 3 or 4 years, budget in the city side of the budget, while the school has got what they deem significant increases in their funding. Those increases came about because of what the school's strides are, in my opinion. And what Attleboro brings to the place. But again, there doesn't seem to be much leeway on this, so we are going to have to revisit this budget and make some hard decisions on where that 1.2 is going to come out of the budget that we unanimously passed as a committee. And like I say, this will be later to talk about, but I did have a pretty candid conversation with Dr. Durkin on the phone today, and I would just like her to briefly top on that with the committee. I think the whole committee should know this. Going back, I think when Dr. Durkin presented her preliminary budget, it was based upon a certain number, and then after that, there was additional items. These were not extras by anything, and they were to the tune of, I think, $714,000 or something around that range. So if you take $1.2 million and subtract $700,000, now it was $500,000 of what Dr. Durkin preliminary gave to the school committee. And I just want Dr. Durkin to talk briefly about what that $500,000 entails.
Well, if we go back to the earlier staffing that we put forward, I think it's very important to realize that there were 4 major issues that these are not extras, but they are critical to be able to move the school system forward. These are children's services. And one in particular, I'll just start with the elementary position at Hyman Fine. We know our class size is only increasing. Historically, when we look at Attleboro, we do not lose 50, 75 kids over the summer. If in fact it's the reverse where we gain students, and by November we're at peak. So we know our enrollment is going to increase. You recall last year at Hill Roberts, though we did not go over class size, there were several parents in kindergarten who felt their children were in a classroom that had many children. And we were able to provide, to say to them if they would like to go to the Studley School, and we would provide transportation for that. My concern is that we are so tight in many of the elementary classrooms that that's not just going to be one situation that occurred at Hill Roberts. Now, no families took advantage of that, but we were able to make that option. If that occurs in more than 2 or 3 schools, there's going to be a situation where we're going to have to be transporting, and that is going to be a slight cost, you know, with that. But more importantly, I think when you look at kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade students, families usually see the school, they're in the neighborhood of the school, they expect their children to go to that school. And though we would do it for a year, that could cause a great deal of distress with that. I'm not trying to say it's any easier in high school, but we know class size in high school is a different element than it is in the earlier grades. The second one is that we also have a class size issue at the middle school and prominently at Coelho. So that position we put in for Coelho was clearly based on real numbers. We're pretty good at projecting our enrollments. We have not come to you and said, oh wow, we made a mistake and now we only have 10 kids in this class as opposed to 30. That hasn't really happened, or 28 I should say. And the other one was the 0.5 position and 2.5 positions equaling one whole position for an adjustment counselor at Hill Roberts and Hyman Fine. There's been a real need there to address behavioral issues. And we've been working very closely with the AEA. Mr. Sawyer, along with Ms. McCarthy, has had what we call a behavior work group for very young children who are demonstrating significant behavioral challenges. And we need more support there for our general education teachers. These are not children who are deemed special education, but they're children who are clearly responding to the stressors of being in a classroom. And giving that teacher support, whether it be additional training, whether it be a timeout time for that young person, but to be able to give that, and we really do need that adjustment counselor added. Of course, we've increased adjustment counselors at the middle school level, but we are seeing behaviors younger and more prominent at the earlier grades. And the last was the 0.5 at the Willett School for our program for autistic needs, the BCBA, the behavioral, help me.
Board certified behavior analyst.
Right, a 0.5 position there because of the increasing needs of our children with autism there. So those 4 positions just give you a reflection. These are children's positions. I don't mean to drive that home. They are not about, in addition to the things we need to run this district well, but they directly affect children, class size of children, and the quality of education that we can do. So.
I think one other thing to add is, and I just received a letter, was from the
Yes.
National,
NEASC.
can you help me with that?
New England Association for School and Colleges. Did I get that right? Okay, all right.
Well, just received a letter from them that was to Mr. Runey, explaining how they were kind of elated about the plans to add staff to the high school to maintain our accreditation. So it's just another issue to worry about. It seems like every time we make strides, especially at the high school level, to maintain our accreditation, which is very important to our students, coming from an accredited high school. So, like I said, the plan they've seen, they were elated. They wanted to follow up on how that was going to be done. I don't think the follow-up letter that we're going to send them is going to be as rosy, if you will, as the one we sent them before, and that kind of does worry me a little bit.
And next year is a study year, and the year after they will be here to begin the accreditation process again. And you know, it took us a while to get to full accreditation after being on warning. We don't want to go back to that. So the whole process begins again and is another extensive, so there's never a reprieve from those kinds of demands, and I think the committee knows that.
I think that's my concern, Dr. Durkin. I believe it probably took about a good 4 or 5 year plan to make sure the accreditation was in place, or made sure that we were meeting their request to keep that accreditation, and it could all go down the tube pretty quickly. We don't have sufficient funding on our side. So Ken, I'm going to give it to you, and I'm actually going to relinquish the chair for a couple minutes to Mr. Cottle.
Thank you.
What is it, finance facility?
So I speak slowly because getting a little anxious. But the fact is that when everyone sees our budget's going to increase year over year, 2.3 million. So everyone's like, 2.3 million, that's a lot more money. But let's be clear on something. When we get 2.3 million, that's going to cover our contractual obligations. That's all. nothing else. And that 2.3 million is not the city of Attleboro saying, let's give the school department 2.3 million. That's the state saying, you must give Attleboro 2.3 million. And a lot of that comes from the state. So again, we're this year going into this budget, but for fiscal year 14, we're getting the bare minimum that the city has to provide. I have a strong feeling if the state said that they only have to give Attleboro another 1 million, we'd only get 1 million more. And then we'd be cutting teachers. So to me, it's scary that we submit a budget and it just goes right back down to the minimum. We talked about the possibility of a $200,000 healthcare holiday, that $200,000 could be used towards schools. That's, since the number's still 1.2 million, I see that's not happening. I just guess that next year we're gonna have more problems. As Dr. said, our classes, we do get increased enrollment often. 10 kids could actually put 3 classes over. Hill Roberts, shipping our kids from one school to another. Next year we'll be hearing about, hey, your budget for your bus is over again. Well, that's because we have to transport kids across town because we have too many kids in one school. And by the way, the kid you live across the street from with, he may be your buddy, but you don't go to the same school with them because you got to ship you across town. I know you play baseball, you can do Cub Scouts with them, but hey, sorry, too bad for your parents. Go to a different PTO meeting. So all these things scare me, and the fact is that maybe 1.2 million was overly aggressive on our part, but we still need something. Our initial start was 500,000. We need 1.2 million, but to get nothing, I just see the school district going downhill. And I do ask that parents, especially parents of those kids with 27 kids in their kindergarten class, those parents need to contact their city officials. Those parents need to, you're going to get this answer from city councils. We don't set the budget, the mayor does. We could just decrease it or keep it the same. Well, you know what? Your city councils are there to advocate for you, so you have to call them. The school committee has made a unanimous vote of 1.2 million higher than the budget, 66.6 million. That was a school committee unanimously voting to give our kids what we felt was needed. Now you have to go to your city councils and advocate for them to ask that they give the kids what they need to. There's nothing else the school committee could do. If we don't get any additional money, we can't provide anything additional. As a matter of fact, we'll probably be able to only provide you less than this year. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Oh, you still have the floor. Barbara's got a.
No, this is fine. It's you relinquish it to you. You get the floor.
Oh, I thought this was finance and facility. Weren't you updating, or are you just? Oh, you're just under new business.
No,
Wanted to stress
I'm on
that.
a new business.
All
I
right.
just want to stress
No problem. Go ahead, Barbara, and then.
I just want to add to that, as you can see, we're fighting for budget. We put forth what we need, we're told no. We have a shortage in transportation. We put forth we need help, we're told no. And the answer just is if you don't pay it, oh well, there's no services. I feel like that's almost a threat. If the school committee doesn't take care of it, doesn't do this, then oh well, our hands are washed. And I don't like that feeling as a parent, that we have to worry that our kids, again, aren't going to get what they need for their education. And it's time that, like Mr. Parent said, we find other avenues to help us with the city. Go forward to your counselor, go to the mayor. From what I heard from my counselor, a couple came to me, it's the mayor's decision, it's in the budget, it's not us. So let's go to the mayor. We need this funding for our children. Our children are the cornerstone of this community. And if we can't put forth an education that we can be proud of and educate our children the way they need to be educated, then we have a real big problem, not just on the school committee end, but on the city side. And for us to say, okay, now we've got to find money that we don't have, or our kids aren't going to get rides to school. We got to find money that we don't have to provide teachers to be in line with ELL. We have to get up to this standard also, or how do we afford those teachers? How do we afford to do that training? We really have to push this. We really need to advocate for more money for the schools. And like Mr. Parent said, we get the bare minimum that the state sets. Well, the bare minimum isn't enough. We've been underfunded for years. So we're still catching up. We are behind. I think, was it Mr. Sawyer said 4 years, was it? We're behind? 5 years in everything. And we haven't been funded enough to catch up. Where does it end? Where does it stop? What happens when you don't have enough money? What do? Shut down a school? Lay people off? No, we can't afford to do this. We need the money to keep what we have in place and to be able to catch up with other districts, or we're going to have real serious problems going forward. So we have to advocate for our schools and our children. I hope the public gets out there and really voices this concern, because we're at the point where enough is enough. We need more. And I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, let's just keep it brief. This is not an agenda item.
Right.
I just wanted to bring it up because of my conversation with Dr. Durkin. She was very pointed to me about what her preliminary report, budget entailed and why it did. So we all need to know that.
Can you just mention that to the public?
What's that?
On Tuesday, June 18th,
June 18th is what?
for the council.
For the city council?
Yeah, I think that's
Budget
important,
presentation?
so they can save the
Yeah,
date,
I
if you
mean,
will.
I will be clear what Barbara just said. We should touch on that briefly, okay? The,
Just the date.
city council goes with the budget that's given them to the mayor. They can only reduce, they cannot add. Okay, so it's the mayor's, thing to present in the budget. So I don't, like I said, I don't wanna be tapping into this too far. My whole objective was to hear Dr. Durkin's side. And number two, I think we all need to, get that preliminary budget. If we don't, still have it with you, review it. We're going to be making some very tough and difficult choices. That was the only reason why I wanted to bring it up tonight, just so everybody's on the same page. And Dr. Durkin,
do you wanna
Tom?
share?
Sure. School committee, you probably know this already, on Wednesday night, the 12th of June, a week from Wednesday, we have the school committee appears before the city council to defend our budget, and the time slot that we have is from 7:10 to 10 minutes to 8. And so it'll be our opportunity to go before the city council along with all the other departments and explain why we need what we need. And that's Wednesday night, the 12th of June, over at the City Hall. And our scheduled time is 7:10 to 7:50.
So Tom, let's just make sure that you carbon copy the whole committee on that again as a reminder after tonight, if
Sure.
you don't mind?
Sure.
And who will be speaking? There's just.
Yeah.
And who will be speaking, Tom?
Tom and I will be presenting the preliminary information, but we've always had members of the committee sitting at the table to answer questions, and in the audience, so.
Okay.
That's what.
The city council usually will ask any committee
Yes.
members there if they want to say something, so if you
Yep.
show up,
Right.
I can say something.
Right.
I would have to think with this sizable shortfall that any school committee member that would want to approach the municipal council should be given dignity to do so, and I'm sure they will
Oh, yeah.
definitely abide by that. Dave, do you want to end this thing here?
The point that I wanted to reiterate is that I think that this discussion and every discussion we've had with regard to budget and fiscal issues reinforces the notion that the budget process is a year-long process, that identifying priorities for the school system is a year-long process, and that Attleboro's commitment to education, financial and otherwise, has to be something that the school committee and members of the public are cognizant of year-round. Someone said earlier in the discussion that there's nothing else the school committee can do. It is certainly true that the school committee cannot vote to allocate the funding that we wish. We certainly can't vote to raise taxes, to generate revenue, to devote those resources in that way. Those are things that are not in our power. I do think, though, that there are other things that the school committee can do with regard to demonstrating the importance of education in the community and building the relationships and the partnerships that are necessary in order for that financial support and other types of support to come through. And I think that one of the ways, frankly, that we build those relationships and those partnerships is avoiding highly adversarial rhetoric. And I do have a little bit of concern with regard to this discussion that it seems to be, we're jumping to the point of brinksmanship, I think, in a way that whether it's warranted or not is not my issue. My issue is it effective? Is that going to ultimately end up in a greater financial commitment? Will it work? And I think that's a question that we really have to ask ourselves, because if it's not effective, even if it feels good because we're frustrated, then I'm not sure it's prudent. So that's my only point.
I have to comment on that, because when it comes to your children in the system and your friends' children in the system, it does get a little hostile, and it does touch home. So when you're a parent and it affects the kids that are trying to get educated and to move on to college, Mr. Murphy, it does affect. And you do try to have that collaboration, but until you're there and you see it and you know how it's affected and you're in that classroom and you're in those schools, then maybe you can talk, but I'm sorry. It does hit home on certain issues like that. So I have to disagree with you, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Yeah, at this time, I'm going to shut down all discussion of the FY14 budget. Every school committee member will have their own chance to either get in touch with their mayor, city council, or be at the budget presentation, as Tom just noted to everybody.
Can I ask what the budget presentation is? Just a question on that date. Is that open to the public or just school committee?
Tom?
Yes, it's
It's open to the,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Well, the public can't speak though.
No.
It's not,
Oh, okay.
the public hearing is 18, correct?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, just to confirm dates and not continue, so the
Right, right.
12th is when we'll get to speak, and that's
Okay.
if they allow us to. It's technically just gonna be Dr. Durkin and Mr. Rose who speaks, and
Mm-hmm.
they probably will ask us to speak if we'd like to. And June 18th would be the public hearing for any parents who wanna go speak about the city budget in general.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to committee reports. Finance, Facilities, and Procurement Subcommittee, Ken Parent.
All right, we got a couple of warrants today. First one dated May 22nd, 2013, in the amount of $533,517.39. Appropriation make up $176,846.31. Special funds $20,179.01. Federal and state grants $13,800.96, and revolving funds of $322,691.71. Second one dated May 29, 2013, the amount of $505,350.68. Appropriations $338,859.96. Special funds $4,152.84. Federal state grants of $149,341.89, and revolving funds of $12,695.99. Our next meeting will be this Wednesday, June 5th at 7 p.m. Mr. Chair, concludes our business.
Thank you, Ken. Moving on to Policy Subcommittee, Ms. Furtado.
We have nothing to bring forward, Mr. Chairman, at this time. The next meeting will be held in this room at 7 p.m. on June 10th, 2013. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.